Well, hello everyone, and thank you for joining us again for another episode here of the Real Success Formula. And today we're going to look at leadership. So, if you've been following this series on LinkedIn, YouTube, or Facebook, this is our fourth episode. So, you can go back and look for the others. You're going to find the other three where we cover relationships, attitude, equipping. Today we're going to cover leadership, and then there's going to be another one where we kind of put everything together. So I prepared some slides for us today to actually go through, and I'm going to share here my screen. So as I shared, this is part of the Real Success Formula. So it's something that we use with our clients, and when we do training and we coach them. And today we're going to look at leading with excellence, developing strong leadership skills, and I'm so delighted to share some of the principles I learned with you, and we're gonna go through, each of those key elements one by one. But before we go there, if you are a bit like me, and if you wanna pursue a dream, you have something that you wanna, achieve, something that is bigger than you, but you may be doing the things wrongly, like I've done it in the past. You maybe try to do it yourself, or you rely solely on your hard skills. That was how I started. If that's you, if you have a big dream, but you maybe try to do it alone, or you rely on your hard skills, your technical skills, your the skills that allow you to do your job well, right? You might be missing the point, because your leadership determines your level of success. Your leadership ability determines your level of success. And that was something that I had to learn the hard way. I didn't think that leadership was something that I need to develop. I was not even aware of leadership, but I was missing the point, because here's what I learned, is that the higher you want to climb, the more you need leadership. The greater the impact you want to make, the greater your influence needs to be. And what does John Maxwell teaches? He teaches that leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. We're going to look into that when we look through the 5 levels of leadership. But for now, think of what kind of qualifies me to talk about this topic. Well, there was a time in my life when I started where I would see leadership as being something that was optional. As a matter of fact, at the very beginning of my career as a manager, I didn't even know what that leadership was. Like, I grew up in post-communist Romania. We don't talk about leadership in the communist system. We have people that are in charge. We don't call them leaders. We call them bosses maybe, but we don't call them leaders. They were not the leader party, right? It was like the president of the party. So they had these big titles, and so there was no signs of leadership. And I didn't know what leadership was until one day when I was part of one of the leadership conferences that our organization organized. And when I stepped in that big auditorium with those red seats, on each of those red seats waiting for us to sit, there was one book, a book by John Maxwell. It was called 360-Degree Leader. And the whole thesis of that book was that you can lead from wherever you are in the organization. You can influence upwards your manager, your upline. You could definitely influence your team, but also you can influence your peers. So that was my introduction to leadership. That was many years ago. It's probably more than 13, 14 years ago. But that was when I learned about leadership. I didn't know what leadership was. That word was not in my vocabulary. But on my journey with building my team, leading organizations, leading projects, I realized the value of leadership. So what I'm sharing today, that's why it's part of our Real Success Formula, right? What I'm sharing today, it's the impact of leadership. So I was struggling to actually make leadership something that it's important to me and benefit from the value of leadership. And I was trying different things, and I was trying, as I shared, to do things alone. I wouldn't believe that leadership is something important. I would rely on my quote-unquote technical skills, my hard skills, right? And nothing seemed to change until I made some shifts. But when I made those shifts, everything changed. So what did I change for me to start experiencing the value of leadership. Here are some things I changed. I acknowledged that I needed to develop my leadership ability. That was something that I had to realize. I was introduced to the leadership topic now. I can't say that I don't know. Before that, I was what we call, ineffective and unconscious leader, right? I didn't know what I don't know. But now all of a sudden, I was still ineffective, but I was aware, I was conscious that I need some things. So I acknowledge that I need to develop my leadership ability. Then I started to invest in leadership training and coaching for myself. That was the first thing that I made. I joined the Maxwell Leadership Organization back in 2014 when I was still in Romania. I was in the United States. I certified myself. I went through the training. So then I started developing myself, and I started reading books, and I started listening to podcasts and tapes at that time. You didn't have a lot of podcasts. You had CDs, and John will give us these USB sticks with his lessons from the past, and we would kind of plug that in the car, and everywhere I drive, I would listen to that. So I started investing in myself, both time and money, in my leadership development, and I got to work with coaches one-on-one, and I got mentors to help me. Then I become more strategic in my leadership growth, right? So now I know that leadership is important, and then I become more strategic in the areas of my leadership that I want to develop. And that's probably what you want to do too, and we're going to discuss a little bit about that. And then the fourth shift that I made, I started to develop other leaders in my team. I shared the story of how one of my goals in my first leadership position was to become dispensable. In other words, to be able to climb the ladder. At the beginning, it was a selfish goal. I wanted to just take the next position. I want to work, cross-functionally with project teams, because I thought that was a challenging leadership position, because I was leading the project team, but I was not their manager. So I didn't have the leverage of the position. And that was one of the really best things that happened in my life when I took that position. But in order for me to take that position, I had to become dispensable from my team leadership role. So I first, just being selfish, started to develop other people on my team so they can take my position, right? So even if it started out of selfishness, it actually helped me develop people on my team. So I started developing other leaders and maximizing and magnifying what I was doing. So if you are like me, and if you have a big dream that is bigger than you, and you might not see the value of leadership, well, that was what helped me. And so I'm going to cover today some things that might help you make those shifts too, okay? So here's what we're going to cover. We're going to look at why should you and I grow as a leader. Why should we grow? We're going to go to the 5 levels of leadership. We're going to look at what are the traits of a real leader, daily growth and prioritizing tasks, and how to prioritize your days as a leader, and then some of the things that great leaders do, empowering their people to potential, okay? So as I mentioned, this is part of the Real Success Formula. And in the past 3 stream lives, we have covered relationship, equipping, attitude, and today we cover leadership. And over the next, I think it's in 2 weeks' time, on the 1st of August, we're going to have another one where we kind of put everything together. So we go back through, the highlights of the relationship, equipping, attitude, and today's lesson. So we put them together and we combine them into the Real Success Formula, okay? So you want to join us on August 1st. All right, so let's dive into today's lesson. So key area number 4, it's leadership. And we talk about developing the leader within you. The question you might have for yourself, and many having, like, why should I develop as a leader? Why do I need to do that? Well, let me share you something here. So look at this graph here on the screen. If you see, what we see then on the vertical axis is your leadership ability, right? So that's your leadership ability. And let's say with very little leadership ability, that was me at the beginning of my career. I had some talent, let's say, that was, some strengths that came with my personality, but I didn't develop that leadership ability. So what I was trying to do is I was trying to outwork other people, right? I was putting the work, I was putting a lot of dedication to bring success for me and my team. So I was putting, let's say, 8 out of 10 in dedication, but I only have 2.5 or 3 there. Between 2 and 3, that was my leadership ability. So what I could do is to actually work even harder, like put even more dedication. Like I could work every hour in a day. I would become more effective in how I spend my time, right? So I could probably grow to 10 out of 10 when it comes to dedication, right? So if I improve my dedication, if I put 10 out of 10, but I don't improve my leadership ability, I could actually achieve a little bit more. Actually, I could increase my effectiveness with 20%, as you could see, right? But what if instead of me working on my dedication, on my effort, what if I develop my leadership skill and then develop other people? What if instead of focusing on me, I focus on the team? Well, this is what happens when I focus on the team. When I develop my leadership skills and I focus on the team. Okay? So we pass from, so in the beginning I was 8 out of 10 on dedication. So let's keep 8 out of 10 in dedication, but let's go and increase my leadership ability to a 7 or 8. Here's what happens, right? So instead of having this 20%, I actually triple my effectiveness. I triple my success rate, if you look at it, right? So leadership ability, it's a multiplier. If you develop yourself as a leader, it affects every single area of your life and your business and your career. So it pays for us to develop our leadership ability because it maximizes what we're doing. And what if I put, even more effort, right? I could actually put, I could go 10 out of 10 on my dedication, but also improve my leadership skills. So you see, I really multiply my ability and my success potential. So leadership, it's that kind of multiplier. It's more or less like emotional intelligence, like public speaking, like communicating. These skills are universal skills that they will help us throughout our life and our career, and they multiply whatever we're doing. So it pays to develop our leadership skills rather than developing or putting more effort trying to do things by ourselves and without developing other people or without a team. So so leadership, it's a multiplier for success. If you look at this, nothing of significance has ever been achieved by an individual acting alone. So when we develop other people and when we develop a team around us, then we multiply our influence, we multiply our success rate. So let's go through the 5 levels of leadership to kind of understand how this leadership works, right? So now we clearly see why leadership is now important and why leadership is a multiplier. So if you put your effort on developing your leadership skills, it will impact every single area of your life. So rather than putting your efforts into putting more energy into what you're already doing today, focus your time and energy into developing your leadership skills, and you will see results in every single area of your life. But why is that? How does really leadership work? I have found John Maxwell's 5 levels of leadership to be a really good model for us to explain how leadership works and why leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. So let's go through it. The 5 levels of leadership, it's a 5-stage model of influence. So the first level where we all start is called position, right? That's where I started. So I was appointed as a leader by our department manager, right? So people started to follow me because of my position. At the end of the day, I was the boss, right? So even that was a challenge for me at the beginning because I become the leader of the team that I was part of, right? So we had experiences in common, and I was their buddy, I was their colleague, and now all of a sudden I become their leader. So even if I become officially their leader, right, they wouldn't really follow me. They would see me in floor and you know how things work around here. Don't be the boss with us, right? So I have zero influence with them. The only influence I had is, well, at the end of the day, I'm the boss, right? So at the end of the day, I had to remind people that I'm the boss, that I'm in charge, right? So as John will say, position is a good place to start, but it's a terrible place to stay. So I started there, and we all start there, right? But I started to bring results for people. I started to get interested in what were the struggles of the team, to really understand, because I also came from the team. I kind of know what the needs and the wants of the team members were. So I started to take those into account. And then little by little, I started to get their permission to lead them. So here, people follow because they want to. At position level, people follow because they have to. Okay? So I was interested, I brought results, and I started to carry the interest of the team in the organization, and that showed, and people started to give me permission to lead them. So what's the difference between level 1 and level 2, right? At level 1, you have positional influence, and you have your boss's permission to lead. That was when Eric Lyotard, the department manager in our organization, promoted me. So he gave me his permission to lead, but I didn't have my team permission to lead until I got to level 2, where that was permission-based influence, and people gave me their permission to lead. So at level 1, you have your boss's permission to lead. At level 2, you have your people permission to lead. Okay? Make sense? Good. All right. So let's go to the next one. Level 3, it's production. All right. So at level 1 position, we got the position we got, promoted, or we just apply for that role. We came into an organization. We are the leader. That's our title. So people follow us because at the end of the day, they have to. We have the leverage of their salaries, of their, employment, right? Level 2, it's permission based, right? People have trust in us, and they gave us permission to lead them and to carry the vision of the organization further, right? In level 3, it's production. Here's where we have brought results for the team, for ourselves, for the organization, and people start to follow us because of what we can do for them and the organization. And the challenge is that most leaders spend their careers between level 2 and level 3, depending on if they are more people-driven or results-driven. So at level 2, right, when we get permissions of the people, the challenge is that we can actually become too close to our people. We can become friends with our people. And so then we spend most time with, creating a great atmosphere around the table, but we might not focus on results, and it might be difficult for us to challenge our team if they don't bring the results that we need to bring. And then level 3 is when we have results. And so if we are more results oriented, then we're going to stay more into level 3 and do not focus that much into creating a very strong relationship with our people. So what's the difference between level 2 and level 3? Well, level 3, it's results-based influence. Task first, results-driven leaders. People follow us because of what we can do for them and the results we bring for the organization. Level 2 is permission-based influence, and this is relationship first, people-driven leaders. Does it make sense? So task first, results-driven leaders versus people-driven leaders. But you don't want to stay at level 2 or level 3. There is level 4, where is people development. And here is where people follow you because of what you can do for them, like you, in terms of bringing opportunities for them, holding the ladder for them to climb, putting them in a position to shine, opening doors for them, offering opportunities to them, investing in their developing, in their growth, in their in the leadership. We have a wonderful event coming up in Gothenburg, Live to Lead. Right? If you want to learn more about that, go to live2lead.se, and it's a wonderful opportunity for our leaders to bring their team together, and then to bring some of your team members into the room. We're going to have John Maxwell and other wonderful speakers, virtually sharing some of the latest thinking in terms of leadership and how to lead in today's world. So events like that, those are opportunities that leaders that are level 4 actually bring their teams to. So instead of you kind of learning by yourself and then maybe trying to pass it on to your team, bring your team with you, right? Come to Live to Lead and bring your team to Live to Lead. Okay? So level 4 is people development. Okay? And leaders become great not because of their power, but because of their ability to empower others. I really believe that. So that's what leaders at level 4 do. Now, there is a 5th level, but that's not very in reach for us. It's probably out of reach for many of us. It's called pinnacle. And that's more or less, people follow you because you've done so well for so long, for so many people. And people follow you because of your reputation. That's where, for example, John Maxwell is, or Nobel laureates, or people that have done so much for the organization or for the world, right? So we don't have to worry that much about level 5, but we want to aim for level 4 at least to actually reach the people development level. So here is why people follow these leaders, right? At level 1, they have to follow. Level 2, they want to follow. Level 3, they admire those leaders' results, so they follow because of that. Level 4, they become loyal to you as a leader because you develop them. And level 5 is built on reputation, so people follow because of your reputation. I hope this makes sense and it allows you to kind of visually see how influence works and see how the 5 level of leadership actually build one upon each other. But don't fall into the trap in believing that if you have reached level 3, then you're going to stay there and you're not going to fall down or change, because first of all, you could be at different levels with different people in your organization. And secondly, like you never graduate one of those, you do them together. So if you, for example, get to, let's say, results, right? That will be level 3. But you forget about the people completely. Then you're gonna, people will gonna retract their permission for you to lead them, right? To lead them. So if you are too focused on results and you want to bring results, and then people are burned out in the process, then people are not going to follow you anymore because you're taking them, on the wrong path, right? So each of these build on each other, but at the same time, you have to meet all the requirements of level 1, level 2, level 3 to stay at level 4, right? You can't just develop people but do not care about them. You can't develop people but do not bring result, right? And you can't develop people and at the same time really not valuing them. Okay, I guess you can develop people without having the position, but it's not exactly the same. So you could be in level 2 and level 3 and even level 4 without having the position. But as a leader, we all start in level 1 at the position level. Okay. So let's look at some of the traits of the real leader, right? What do you mean by real leader? Well, it's the leader that it's able to build relationship, it's equipping other people, his attitude or her attitude are conducive to growth and they develop their leadership skills, okay? So at the end of the day, real leadership is being the person others will gladly and confidently follow. The person others will gladly and confidently follow. I really believe that. And so here is a short list here that you can actually start with. The traits of real leaders. Number 1 is discipline. And why is that? Well, the hardest person to lead is ourselves. I attend conferences, and many times someone in the public will ask John Maxwell, John, you wrote so many books on leadership, like, what's your biggest leadership challenge? And he always answered the same thing. He said, well, the hardest person to lead, the toughest person to lead, it's myself. Why is that? Because I could be here and I could share these principles with you, and that's easy. But applying them and doing them and walking the talk, that's hard, right? So as a real leader, the first thing you have to have under your belt is discipline, right? To lead yourself well before you're leading other people. This is building the foundation of leadership, building the trust. Number two is actually to manage your priorities, right? Real leaders possess a disciplined direction. What do we mean by disciplined direction? First of all, as a real leader, you have a vision of the future, where you want to go and where you want to take your organization. And then as a real leader, you are also disciplined about getting there, right? Many people set big aims and big goals, but when it comes to implementing that and being very disciplined, they fall short. It's very easy to get into the habit of not doing the things that we know that we need to do. So as a real leader, we have to be very disciplined in our priorities and how do we spend our time and what are the things that take us where we need to go. So discipline and priorities are two main things and critical components of a real leader. Then trust, right? Building and maintaining trust. Real leaders build and maintain trust. How do you build trust? Well, first of all, if you lead yourself well, people trust you because you walk the talk, right? That's kind of the first step. And secondly, like when you are trustworthy, like when you build your character, and character is like, being very transparent on your values and then sticking to those values. I shared in another lesson that there's a good practice for us to have these guardrails, like the steel guardrails that you have on the side of the road to keep cars on the road. That's something you can also apply for yourself, like defining what are the things that you're not gonna do. So for example, if you don't work with a certain industry where there is no price for you, meaning that no one can actually buy you, doesn't matter if they ask you to do something which is against your values, doesn't matter the price, right? When you decide all of those things, then you have created those guardrails for your character, and that builds trust. And that's how you build and then maintain trust, is by living the talk, walking the talk, doing what you say we should be doing. And people see that, because people do what people see, and you doing that, it maintains that trust. Then vision, one of the characteristics of a real leader is that they see before others see, and they see more than others see. This is a principle that I learned from John, like working closely with John. And he says, like, if you are the leader in the room and you're not seeing things first, then you might not be the real leader, because leaders see before others see. In other words, when your team is kind of stuck here and talks about this challenge, and you see 2 or 4 steps ahead. So you see more of the picture and the implication of the situation, and you see further, you see what's going to happen down the line, because that's having a vision, right? A vision is not a vision for the present. Usually a vision is a vision for the future, right? So as a leader, as a real leader, we need to be a few steps ahead of our team. So discipline, priority, trust, and vision. All right. So let's look at a 5-step formula. So how do you actually train your team, and how do you pass on the information, right? So it starts with model, then mentor, monitor, motivate, and multiply. Model means exactly what we just discussed. We discussed about you walking the talk. So when you walk the talk, you're modeling the behavior that you want to share with your team, like you're modeling that. Then when you see people picking up that, then you mentor them. You say, hey, here is how we do things. Like, in order for us actually to be disciplined, here is how I work with my priorities. So then you mentor people in the areas that you want them to develop, like, for example, priorities. Then you monitor kind of their activity motivate them based on the small wins, the small results that they get, and then multiply, like you apply that in other areas, and you encourage them to share that knowledge with other people. So how do you kind of pass this idea of the real leadership within your organization? Well, you can use this 5-step training formula. Okay, so let's look at how do we grow daily, right? So we discuss a little bit about the 5 levels of leadership. We look at the traits of a leader. We look at how do we pass that on to our team through the 5-step training formula. And now let's look at how do we prioritize our days, right, and our tasks. If you remember, I shared in the beginning my journey through kind of my leadership journey. At the very beginning, I was, where you see there at the top left corner on your screen, I was an ineffective, unaware leader. I didn't know what I don't know. I didn't know that leadership was a thing. I didn't know what leadership was. That was not part of my vocabulary. But then, as I shared, I got that book from John Maxwell at that conference. So then I was introduced to the idea of leadership. And not only that, but that you can actually influence people from wherever you're in the organization. So then I became, I was still ineffective, but at least I was aware, right? So I was in the left bottom corner where I was ineffective, but aware. Now I know what I don't know. And then because I know what I don't know, I started to grow in those areas. And then I moved to the bottom right corner. And when I started to become effective, and I was also aware, and because I knew what I was doing, I grew, and I know it starts to show. So that's when I started to go to conferences, join the John Maxwell team, get certified, listen to leadership podcasts, work with the coach, work with the mentor. And that's when I started to see results, right? So I moved from I don't know what I don't know to I grow, and I know it starts to show, and people started to see that. And then I moved up into effective and unaware, meaning that I was doing that automatically. I simply go because of what I know. I know that I constantly need to develop. I know that there are areas that I don't know. I know that there are things that I don't know about leadership, and so I constantly have to challenge things and be open-minded and be curious. And so I started from not knowing, right, what I don't know, to know that there are things that I don't know, and then to grow in those areas and seeing results, and then to simply going. And so this is kind of the 4 phases of leadership growth, and we all start in the unawareness. We don't know the things that we don't know, but once we know, we can't say that we don't know anymore. So when it comes to leadership growth, like how do you now, make sure that you grow daily? Well, first thing is that leaders do not develop in a day. They develop daily. Not in a day, but daily. So what do leaders do to prioritize their days? Seems like some people pack more in their days, right? I love this quote from John again. He sees like our days are like suitcases of identical size, but some people manage to pack more in their days than others. So if you are like me, you want to know how do people pack more. And one of the biggest shift I found when it comes to priorities and growth and prioritization of your time is the shift between being productive and being busy. I think so many of us make this confusion because we often confuse being busy with being productive, and they're not the same. And so how do we actually make sure that we're spending our time on the activities that give us the greatest return? One of the principles I have found very useful is the Pareto principle. The Pareto principle, or the 80-20 principle, says that there is activities in our day that bring us a disproportionate return on our investment, meaning that there is 20% of activities that we should do as a leader that give us 80% of our results, and the rest of 80% of activities only give us 20% of our results. So this applies in almost every single area of our life, and there is a great book with the same name that you could actually pick up and read. But let me share with you how this applies. 20% of our time produces 80% of our result. For the business, top 20% of our customer generate 80% of the company revenue. The top 20% industries or products generate 80% of one country's export. To sales, it applies in a way that the top 20% of salespeople generate 80% of the company sales, and so on and so forth, right? 20% of our habits generate 80% of the results in marketing. 20% of marketing campaign generate 80% of leads or sales. Investing in people, investing in the market, but also in people, right? The top 20% investment generates 80% of the returns, and so on and so forth. So you can see that this is the whole idea is that they are disproportionate returns on some activities, right? So not every activity has equal return on their on their time investment. So if you have 10 activities on your to-do list, it doesn't mean that each of those 10 will contribute 10% to your return on that day. There are some activities that have a disproportionate return. Some give you greater return and others much less than what you think. So it might not be 80-20, it might be 70-30, it might be 90-10, it might be 75-25. But the idea is that we want to understand what are those 20% activities that bring us 80% of the return, because that's where we want to spend our time, okay? This builds on the idea that our results and our returns on what we do are not linear. I mean, what I just shared, if we have 10 things on our to-do list, and if we check 2 out of those 10, we might believe that we have reached 20% of our day, right? But it might be that those actually 2, and if we prioritize the right ones, actually give us 80% of the return on that day. So if we look at the graph here, the red line would follow what we say the linear projection of one activity 10%, 2 activity 20%, right? But if you think about what we're just sharing here, the 80-20 rule says that there is a parabolic actually relationship between the activities and the return. So that's where we need to find that sweet spot where 20% of our effort give us 80% of our results. Make sense? All right. So how do we identify the top 20% activities on our agenda? So the way we do that is that we think about what are those things that we do. Like, we need to kind of list them. So here is a kind of very practical exercise. You just maybe list this on a piece of paper, or maybe you list them digitally if you want, and then identify what are those top 20% things that give you 80% of your results, and then you would circle those tasks and you highlight those. And how do these kind of 20% look for you? So for example, if you're a leader, like, spending time into developing your employees definitely is one of your top priorities, so should be actually on your list. As a leader, having the one-on-one discussions, having the feedback loops with your team, investing in your team, mentoring a team member, those are the things that give you the greatest return on your time as a leader. So those should be on your kind of top 20% list. But also it applies to the people on our team, right? So as a leader, you might have 10 people on your team, and if you give them equal amount of time and resources, then you expect them to have equal returns. And that's not usually the case. Each individual is different, and their actually contribution will be different. So how do you know where to spend your time? Well, you apply the same rule to your people. So again, 20% of your people, the top 20%, will actually give you 80% of the results and will move the things forward in your team. So you want to identify who are those 20%. Because as a leader, the question is not if your calendar will be full, but who and what will fill your calendar. That's the question for us. It's not that if you're going to be busy. Of course you're going to be busy, but whom is going to keep you busy? And what is going to keep you busy? And so when it comes to your team and how do you prioritize the people on your team, I have found this method to be really, really useful. So you would list the people on your team, and you would then rate them based on the impact they could have if they start working against you, or if they would leave the team altogether. So A would be a huge impact, B would be a negative impact, but not stop you altogether, and C might not affect you, or in fact might even help you progress faster if you have someone that has maybe a more negative attitude, right? So you will rate people on your team with A, B, C. And then if you have more than one A, then you rate the A's in the second column there. You would have A1, A2, A3, then the B's, and then you rate the B's, B1, B2, B3. And then based on where people land, and then you would decide if for example B1 is more important than A3, then you rate them in terms of priority. And the challenge is, like, if you then compare your list with the priorities that you put here with the way you spend your time, you're probably gonna find out that some of your, let's say, list producers actually take most of your time because they are more needed. They will need more help, they will need more support, and they will also ask for more support. So I'm not saying not to help them, but I'm saying, like, you might not be the best person to help them, because if they have a challenge or a question that 5 of your 10 team members can answer, then they should probably actually approach that person first, and then you will actually spend your time with the highest producers. So this is counterintuitive, and I know many leaders struggle with this because we tend to give more time and attention to the people that actually ask for it the most, rather than the people that actually will maximize our efforts. So I think this exercise will help you, and if you go through it, you're definitely gonna see that it helps you to put your time where it needs to be, because as a leader we really need to spend our time very, very wisely. So there was one more thing I want to share with you. We're gonna go quickly through this one. There is another method that builds on this one. It's a bit different, but you can actually use them together. Another method to prioritize your days. John Maxwell calls them the 3 R's, right? So for us, we need to identify what's required of us, what gives us the greatest return, and what's rewarding. What do we mean by these things, right? Okay, so what do we mean by this is that what's required of you are the things that only you can do, right? Each role, each job has some non-negotiable. There are some things that are written in your contract. There are some things that are your responsibility. There are some things that you can't delegate to anyone else. And so those will be the things that are required of you, right? So you list all of your activities and you create 3 columns, and then you put the things that are required, right? Or you rate the things that are required of you in the required column, right? So these will be the things that only you can do, the non-negotiables, responsibility of your roles and contract or obligation. Then we're going to look at what gives you the greatest return. And when we think about return, it's more or less like the greatest result. So if you only do 1 or 2 things, like what are the things that you're really, really good at, you're gifted at, you have developed those gifts, you're really, really good at that. And if you only do that, it's going to really move you and your team forward. So when you look at what is your greatest return, okay, we look at the things that fall into the category of the things that you're good at, the things that people compliment you for, the things and the tasks and responsibilities that your colleagues ask you to take on, right? And what do you do that brings the most significant positive impact and the most revenue, right? So you see the difference between required and return, right? So there will be some things that are required. Like for me, I need to do my bookkeeping, right? I don't like to do it. It's needed. I legally need to do it. I'm not good at it, but I need to do it. So it's required. But then some of the things that I'm really good at and give me the greatest return in doing what I'm doing now, in being one-on-one on calls with leaders, in coaching and facilitating, that's what gives me the greatest return as a coach, trainer, and speaker. But the bookkeeping, it's actually required of me, and I need to do it anyway. And then there are things that give us rewards that are rewarding for us. We can't just fill in our days with the things that are required, but we don't want to do, maybe the things that we're good at, but maybe do not really give us energy, but also the things that are rewarding. And for me, I'm lucky because what it's give me return and it's also rewarding, but not for everyone. So you want to know that you also have some things on your agenda that are rewarding for you. So what is most rewarding? Well, what are some things that you would do them gladly, even for free? What are the things that you enjoy doing and energize you? And when do you say, I was born for this? So if you answer these questions, you're going to be able to identify the things that give you the greatest return. Ideally, they should be like the things the things that are most rewarding for you. And ideally should also be the things that give you the greatest return, right? So reward, return, and required. So when these three align, so if what's required of you, it's what gives you return, and also what's rewarding, then what you must do and what you do well and what you enjoy doing are one and the same thing. And that's the holy grail of leadership and career. So that's kind of another framework for you to prioritize your day. And so how do you apply this rule? Well, you list your activities unless you can apply this on top of the 80-20, or you can apply these 3 R's and then apply the 80-20 to your 3 R's. But it goes like this. So you list all of your activities. In this case, you see some activities here that we listed, and then you rate them from 1 to 3 on the required, return, and reward. And then you add those and you create a score, right? And the activities with the highest scores are the activities that you should be doing first. And this should match your 80-20 rule. This should match your top 20%. So in this case, we just took 5 activities, right? And on these 5 activities, let's say the top one would be actually the top 20%. But look at what came up there. It's conducting performance evaluation and training team members. Those are score 8, right? You might like organizing the team building retreat, or you might not like it, but it might give you return, but it's not the requirement of you as a leader. Maybe someone else could do it. So I hope you see how this works, but on a piece of paper, if you want a downloadable file, we actually have one for you to fill in, so you can just use it. But on a piece of paper, or in an Excel file, list your activities, put these 3 columns, and then rate them in each of the 3 categories: requirement, return, or reward, based on the definitions we shared with you earlier. And that will help you prioritize your agenda, because the challenge is for you and for me to spend our time on the things that are not top priority. They are not top 20%, and they might not be required, or they might not give you the greatest return. And so I really think this code summarizes very well, because the reason why most major goals are not achieved is that we spend our time doing second things first. I really believe that. I'm guilty of it, and I constantly have to remind myself and to get back to the 80-20 and the 3 R's rule in order for me to be able to kind of really focus on the things that matter to me and give me the greatest return as a leader. So that was what I want to share with you on the personal growth and priorities, and applying these rules might help you actually see how you can prioritize your time and spend your time where it matters most. So let's talk a little bit about empowering other people, as a leader, right? What do we leave behind is more or less a legacy of a leadership culture in our organization. So how to empower other people to their potential? Well, John shares that the leader's lasting value is measured by succession, right? Not by what we do now, not by what we've done in the past, but what do we pass on, and how do we develop the leaders in our organization? So what can we do, right? What do people that and leaders that actually create a great leadership culture and leave something behind and leave the organization better than they found it? what do they do? So here are some things that they do. Leaders that have that leave a legacy of succession, they lead with the organization with a long view. What I mean by that, this is self-explanatory, but they focus on the long term, right? They might be facing some strategic decisions that seem to be, very important for today, like with COVID and many other things. Like many leaders just kind of try to cut the losses and maybe let people go, not thinking on the long term that in 2 years or in 6 months or whatever, when this is over, we're going to need those people again. So when you want to leave a legacy and you build a leadership culture in your organization, you think on the long term, right? That creating that leadership culture. When we think about leadership culture, is you not only talking about leadership, you're not only expressing those leadership traits, but you kind of setting the stage and investing in leadership development, right? So when you build a leadership culture, then leadership, it's important at all levels, right? And you always think about the leaders of tomorrow. So it's not only important for you to develop yourself as a leader, for the current leader to be developed, but also to have more or less a school, right, for upcoming leaders. Like, who are the leaders of tomorrow? That's thinking long term and leaving a legacy for the organization. Leaders who leave a legacy, they pay the price today to assure success tomorrow. They don't focus on the short term, and they're willing to do the investment that they need to do today to pay the price for tomorrow's success, right? And this is very challenging for many leaders. If you are measured on this quarter results, like, you're not going to think about 3 years time and how you're going to develop leaders. No, you're going to think about the quarterly results, right? If you measure like 2024 has to be this goal, then you don't care about the future that much, because what's rewarded gets done, right? What's rewarded is reinforced. So if you as an organization, you value this quarter results or this half a year results or this year results, and you don't care about the 5-year plan, then people are going to focus on what you ask them to do. They focus on the short term. So you have to pay a price today to ensure tomorrow's success. These leaders value team leadership above individual leadership, and while they develop people as individuals, they also develop the team, and they have a focus on collaboration, knowing that the team will take them much further than they can go by themselves. And they walk away from the organization with integrity. In other words, they leave the organization better than they found it. They have that integrity that what they've done, it's actually helping the organization. They put the interest of the organization above their personal interests. Because one of the challenges of today is that too few CEOs of companies develop leaders and strong leaders. They don't groom those leaders to take the organization over when they're not there. Too few people do that, and that's a pity, because we need to focus more on the long term. Because at the end of the day, every leader eventually leaves that organization, one way or the other. And the question is, are you leaving that organization better than you found when you came in? That's the test of a leader. That's the test of a leader that leaves a legacy behind. So ask yourself some of these things, right? How can you make your leadership last? Like, what do you do? How do you pass it on to people? How do you develop people so your leadership lasts once you are not there anymore? And think about, what are you leaving behind? These are some really important questions, and I don't know you might have an answer right now, but it's probably worth pondering on them during this summer if you have a chance. So that's what I want to share with you today on the Real Success Formula. So today we look at leadership, and next time on August 1st, we're just going to assemble everything together. We're going to get back to take some elements from relationship, equipping, attitude, and leadership, and for us to see how this all thing work together. remind ourselves, this is kind of the general theme of what we're doing right now. Each new challenge, each new level of growth requires a different and better you. That's what we're doing today. Thank you for joining us. I hope you found value in today's call. And if you are in Gothenburg or in the area, we would love for you to join us at Live to Lead. We have some amazing speakers. We have John Maxwell, that's for sure. And we're going to see how we bring these other amazing speakers to you. John Gordon, Michael Jr., Chantello. They have amazing stories that will help you, develop your leadership. So if you want to develop your leadership, if you want to become a real leader and join us at Live to Lead, it's going to be a wonderful simulcast event out of the United States. We'll be simulcast in 300 locations around the world. Gothenburg is one of them, the only one actually in Sweden. And I don't even know if there will be one in Norway or in Denmark. So it's probably the only one in the Nordics. And bring your team with you. Like, if you want to leave a legacy, bring your team with you. We have team packages. We'll have a round table sitting, 8 people at a table, so you can bring 8 people, and it's going to be a very small investment for you as an organization. So we hope to see you at Live to Lead in Gothenburg. We're going to share more details on that in the upcoming posts, but check it out at livetolead.se, and I look forward to see you next time for kind of the final stream from this series, from the Real Success Formula, where we're kind of integrating all of these 4 elements together. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for joining us today. I look forward to see you next time. Thank you for joining. And if you have any question or any comments, drop them in the comments. I'm going to go through the comments after the stream, and I'll be more than happy to answer those for you. And make sure you check Live to Lead at livetolead.se. I'll be more than happy to share more information with you if you require it. All right. Thank you for tuning in. Take care. See you next time.